Welcome to Hope in the Halls, Christian voices from Washington, D.C., sponsored by Hope to the Hill, also sponsored by Can We Pray, with your hosts Nathan and Amber Kistler. Learn more about Hope to the Hill at www.hopetothehill.com.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah, welcome back.
It is Wednesday, because this will be posted today, so what is this, Wednesday the 4th of October?
I cannot believe we're in October. Every time we say that it's October, I am still in disbelief that we are almost done with 23.
I know. A lot has happened this year.
A lot has happened since yesterday.
Yes.
My heart is heavy today.
Mine too. It all kind of started, obviously it all started back in January.
Yeah.
But Saturday, it really heated up, with the government shutdown stuff. And, obviously, if we're talking about, fiscal responsibility in America as a country, it's very important. And what happened Saturday has happened for many, many years, where we come back to this same spot of the debt ceilings and all of that. And that's a whole nother conversation. But Saturday, a certain member of Congress said he was going to file this motion, essentially.
I think we all know who that was.
We do.
Very well known, Matt Gaetz.
And that's what he did Monday. And now we are
without a
down.
speaker.
We are down a speaker. And so I want to kind of walk through some of that. And a lot of people have been reaching out to us over the past days and asking. And I know you've had text messages just in the last 24 hours.
Oh, I had so many asking, our opinions, what we thought of Speaker McCarthy, who we thought the next speaker would be, and, did we agree with it, basically? And it's, it's tough. Like I said, my heart was heavy because on the ministry side of things, McCarthy was amazing to us. We screened The Sound of Freedom because of Speaker McCarthy, former Speaker McCarthy. And that was an amazing moment in history because it was a historical moment. We talked about that. And I said yesterday, when we knew that they had the votes to vote him out, I said, if he hangs his head high about anything, it can be that he made history with screening the first film on Capitol Hill. And it happened to be The Sound of Freedom, which is one of the biggest films of all time now. And it's still gaining notoriety because it's now gone global. And not only did he screen the film for members of Congress, but they helped pass 2 bills that helped protect children. And that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, no, they haven't passed the Senate. They haven't. One of them, I think, is actually passed in the House. And the other bill is still in committee.
Right.
But I guess the best way to put that is they've been initiated.
Yeah.
Even initiated.
They came about because of that.
Yeah, one of them is called the Sound of Freedom Act.
Yeah. But he did that. That was his leadership that led to that. And we had so many plans in the future that we had made with him and his office. And it's just really sad. And I know it's not just that. I have faith that God can use other speakers that we'll build relationships with. We don't know who the speaker will be at this point, but we have built many relationships with members of Congress. And so I just know that God's not done with that part of it yet. We still have films that we want to bring to the Capitol and to the members of Congress that we think that they should see. And I believe that God will bring that to fruition, no matter who is in office and who is not. But from a ministry aspect, it was sad to watch him go as a speaker because he helped us in so many different ways. And he was good to us in our ministry. And he was very open to a lot of the ideas that we had when we brought them forth.
Yeah, I think if we go back about a year and a half ago, and obviously I remember I had met McCarthy probably a handful of times over the years that he's been in Congress. An acquaintance level. And about a year and a half ago, we had Kirk Cameron in town for an event, a trip that we had in D.C. And Congressman Loudermilk and I, which I would love for Congressman... we have a Roomba in the room here that is communicating with us here. But Congressman Loudermilk, who I think would make a phenomenal speaker, just throwing that out there. Congressman Loudermilk and I had a lot of conversations about, what things would look like. And we've obviously had all these conversations with, you, me, and Barry, Desiree, sitting in the office about Christian films and our desires to bring faith, not just faith entertainment, but engagement into Congress more. And so when Kirk was coming into town, obviously Barry was very excited about that. And I asked him, I said, do you think we could get to a meeting with the minority leader, which Kevin was the minority leader at the time? And he said, well, let me reach out. Well, within 10 minutes, he called me back and he's like, he would love to meet with Kirk. I said, great. I said, well, we'll work it out when he gets into town. And I laughed because it was just the funniest day. We had all these people coming into town for the trip. It was a Monday, and Kirk got in, and he has this huge monument, the monument to our forefathers, the copy of it that he carries with him. It's like, I think it's like 4 feet tall. Yeah. And Kirk carried that monument from the car. He got it out of the case in the car, carried it all the way into the office buildings to Barry's office. And
he wouldn't let anybody else carry it.
No, he said
if it got broken.
Because the finger at the very top of the monument of the statue has a forefinger pointing to heaven. And he said somebody broke the finger and he glued it back on. He said, if anybody's going to break it,
it's going to be me.
I want to be mad at myself, not somebody else for it. So that's
a good point.
Yeah, it's true. So he's carrying this monument, and we go to Barry's office. We talked for a few minutes waiting for the speaker to call to tell us that we could go ahead and come to the Capitol. He calls. We head over to the Capitol, and there goes Kirk carrying that monument through. And people are looking at him, what in the world is this guy doing? Which most people knew. It's Kirk Cameron, He's carrying a monument. So we get up there, and I'll never forget it. McCarthy walked out, and he goes, oh, what is this? And he said, I was going to show you this. So there's a picture that actually the Speaker's office took that I thought was so cool that day. It's a picture of McCarthy sitting in a chair, and Kirk, they'd taken everything off this coffee table. Kirk set the monument on the coffee table, and Kirk is actually on his knees crawling around the coffee table explaining what this whole monument means. And McCarthy was so blown away.
Well, he's a historian.
He is, but he had never heard, as most people in America have never heard of the monument to our forefathers in Plymouth, Massachusetts. McCarthy said, he said, members of Congress need to see and hear what this is. They need to know. He said, if I'm Speaker of the House, I want to help encourage this. He said, this is great.
Right.
So that was kind of where we started having the conversations about screenings, because that day I said, well, we have all kinds of dreams of things. And I always tell people, he owed us nothing. We could do nothing for him that he couldn't do for himself.
Right.
So the fact that he said that day, yes, if I'm Speaker of the House, he said, you will have full reign to do those things.
And he kept that promise.
He did. And that's one of the things that I have continued to remind people over the past few days, especially yesterday and today, that McCarthy was a man of his word. And I'm grateful for that, because I think probably one of the greatest legacy pieces of the work, not our work that we've done, and probably his work, will go down as that screening that we did of Sound of Freedom, and the fact that nobody will ever truly know how much extra oomph that gave that film by having members of Congress view that.
Well, I think, just for the podcast today, we should answer the 4 questions, because those seem to be the reoccurring questions, the theme that people keep asking, which is, what did you think of Speaker McCarthy? What is your opinion on the whole matter? Do we agree with it? And then the 4th one was basically, who do we think the new speaker will be? So we've put out what we think of McCarthy. We loved him. We still love him. He's a great man.
Well, and one last thing to add into that first piece that I think is very important, because as a ministry, it's actually it's the most important question that we can ever ask anybody.
Exactly.
And I have twice sat down in the quiet of McCarthy's office, once when he was minority leader and once as the speaker, where he shared his testimony.
Yeah.
And that to me, more than anything, matters. Because so many people, as we were on a radio interview this morning, I've been around it, you've been around it now long enough to see that everybody that was running for public office in America, most of the time, more so probably 10 years ago and before that, now you have a lot more people that they're happy to claim that they're not religiously affiliated at all.
Yeah.
But for a long time, if you're running for public office, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I'm such and such. Remember, Obama claimed, I go to, Jeremiah Wright's church in Chicago and I'm a Christian, all this. As soon as he became president, that stuff just kind of fell by the wayside. Everybody has claimed it. I always respect people that maybe don't always wear it on their sleeves, but actually just live it. And that's kind of been our whole thing with members of Congress, through relational evangelism. We just walk through life with them. We live life with these folks and walk the halls daily. Instead of preaching a sermon at them, we try to live a sermon for them. And so I was very, I respected that fact that McCarthy was not someone that just kind of was very flamboyant in his faith, like so many say they are. Just lived it out. So that is a big key. So moving on to the next question.
Yeah. So I think before we even move on to that, let's talk a little bit about why they brought this forward. And I think you're good at maybe explaining that, because there was a lot of people that had asked me, why did this even happen? How did this start? And I'm not saying necessarily from our perspective why we think it happened, but what, people like a Representative Matt Gaetz says he wanted it to happen. And then we can kind of segue in a little bit into what our opinion is of that.
Yeah, I think there's a plethora of reasons why this happened. And again, something that I do want to make clear on the forefront of that as well. 4%. And that's been my answer to a lot of people over the last day, which I thought former Speaker Newt Gingrich made that point very well. Last night, he said, 4% of the delegation, the Republican delegation, voted against McCarthy. 8 people. That is nothing.
Yeah. And we kept I shouldn't say having, we kept hearing people say, well, his party wanted him gone. Even his own party wanted him gone. That is a very, first of all, unfactual statement, an untrue statement.
Yeah.
It was 4% of his party.
Yeah. And
you have to remember and keep in mind that 4% voted with Democrats.
Yeah.
On this. So you really have to look at the facts. And I love what Newt Gingrich said last night when he was on Hannity. We turned on the news, which we don't ever do unless there are historic moments, right?
Yeah.
We turned it on last night. It was a historic moment. We wanted to see what everybody's opinion was and what they were saying. And Newt Gingrich said, if you had a football team and you saw that 5 or 6 of the players all of a sudden on your team started playing for the other team and they were helping the other team and they were helping beat you up, and they were tackling their own players, you would get them off the field immediately. There would be no doubt you would get them off the field.
Yeah.
And I think we have to take a closer look at who our team is now in these coming days of what they are truly voting for, and look at it from a deeper perspective than, we talk about politics. And I said this yesterday because I remember Barry Loudermilk gave some beautiful wisdom to us when he said politics isn't always about politics. It doesn't mean that when we talk about the 4% necessarily, it doesn't mean that they hated McCarthy.
Yeah,
not all of
those
them.
8 people,
yeah,
you could have 8 different reasons why they voted that way. Yeah,
and sometimes it has nothing to do with the fact that they just had a vendetta against him. Sometimes it's because of promises that are being made to them. Sometimes it's backroom deals. Yeah. And it's the dirty side of politics. And unfortunately, it ruins people's lives and their careers. Yeah. And, the other thing that I didn't think about till today, it's not just McCarthy that's out of a job. It's the people that worked with him in that office that now they've got to figure out a different place to go. Where did their jobs? And I know some of them have other jobs that they were kind of double dipping in that office.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them that were moved up to that their lives are now changed. It's not just about one person. It's about a whole team of people. And he was the Speaker of the House. That's the biggest team that you can have over there in the House of Representatives.
Right.
And so it really affected a whole lot of people. And not just to mention, let's talk about our country. Yeah. It affects our country.
Yeah, and I think, I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody about this, last night, actually. And I think one of the ironic parts that I struggle with when it comes to these things, going back to the fiscal responsibility issue that people are talking about. So often in politics, one party screams fiscal responsibility while the other one, when the other one's in power, they're not screaming fiscal responsibility, and then it flip-flops, and then it's the opposite. When the other's in power, they don't care. During the previous presidency, when I think it was $6.3 trillion was added to our national debt. And this is not a Trump quarrel per se.
No.
But it was during his presidency, which the Republicans, for a time of that, had presidency, House, and Senate. So this is really a discussion about the whole, not just one person. $6.3 trillion added to the national debt in 4 years. I never heard certain members of Congress screaming about fiscal responsibility during those 4 years.
Exactly.
Not once, actually. And now, all of a sudden, that's the reason why they want McCarthy removed, because they want to, have fiscal responsibility. When there was more money added to the national debt in 4 years of a Republican-led, House, Senate presidency than we've ever had in that time frame. So the point that I'm making is, I don't know. I wonder, and to your point, I don't really wonder if this is all about fiscal issues.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
As much as it is about
a
personal issue, maybe at least from one member. And there's so many things behind the scenes that go on that, I don't want to get into on here, that, conversations that have been had with us that I'm not at liberty to talk about on this setting. But there's just a lot of different pieces, I think, that we need to look at. Now, that being said, how do we feel about it? Disappointed, I would say, very much. And
I would say, me personally, just to put it out there, we don't agree with it. We don't agree that it should have happened.
No, I don't, and it's pretty heartbreaking. I think for all the reasons you've mentioned too. Obviously, staff have to find new jobs. This stuff happens a lot, but when you get to know staff, you get to know people that you love. It becomes a personal thing, and so you it's hard to detach that. But I do think that everybody, you and I were talking about this morning on the phone when we were driving separate cars over here. Jim Jordan has been celebrated as probably one of the premier conservatives of this moment in American history. And even Jim Jordan has said this was a mistake. This we were so close to getting a lot of things that we've been working towards, that McCarthy had been working towards, and it was a mistake.
Yeah, they had a great working relationship. They were doing a lot. I mean, talk about the appropriations that they were getting done, and that was about to happen. I mean, so all that stops now.
And think about this. I mean, we haven't had a more conservative speaker in 30 years. In my lifetime, we haven't had a more conservative speaker.
No.
I worked in D.C. During towards the end of the Boehner years, and during all the Paul Ryan years, as we were talking about in that interview this morning. We got engaged at the end of the Paul Ryan years.
We got engaged on the speaker's balcony,
and I am grateful to you, Paul. Thank you.
Yes, and it is. We were the last ones. I think we were one of two.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And it never happened again. They have made that where
next to that
it's illegal to do so.
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know if that was our fault, but anyway.
Maybe.
It was a beautiful night.
I would do it again.
But that being said, with all due respect to both of those gentlemen whom I have friendships with, and I'm grateful for both of them in their own right, they were not as conservative as McCarthy is. And I think it's going to be hard to find a more conservative speaker than what we had. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. These next few weeks are going to be tough. And people really, more than anything, need to be praying for wisdom for these folks.
They need to be praying for the members.
Yes. And you made a great point this morning on that radio interview we did this morning. I think it is a perfect moment right now for Christian people. If you're listening to this, encourage your friends to call your member of Congress and just tell them you're praying for them. Call their office. You don't need to say anything.
They don't need your opinions. That's for a later time.
Yep.
Right now, and we've been inundated with phone calls from members.
Yeah.
I mean, who have asked us, please pray for us. We are stressed. We have anxiety. We don't know what the future looks like. We've got to find a speaker, and we have to do it within a week because America depends on that.
Yeah.
And they need the encouragement from people. And like I said this morning, if you don't know who your member is, it's a quick Google search to find out. And all you have to do, as soon as you find that whoever that member is, it gives you the number to their office. And we are begging you to call them and just tell them that you are praying for them, that you appreciate them. And it's the time we've had enough sword fights, right? Like we've had enough fighting. It's time to put down the weapons and just pray and say, we love you. We appreciate you. We are praying for you, and we believe in you. And people don't realize how much that changes a person, especially if they get a phone call after phone call after phone call. Can you imagine? I mean, we walk into these offices. Can you imagine seeing the front desk going, the only messages we got today was about, there's like 150 of people saying they're praying for you and they love you. Imagine what that could do for a member of Congress to hear that.
Yeah.
And how much it could go, you know what? I feel like I can do this job today.
Yeah.
I can make a difference because these people took time out of their day to tell me that they cared about me, that they're praying for me, and that they appreciate me.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it's like, it's one of the most thankless jobs. And it's not as, and we've talked about this before, it's not as pretty and rosy as people like to make it sound.
Right.
It's tough. And we have walked alongside enough members to watch that. The toll it takes. The death threats people have. I mean, we have friends, members.
Oh, yeah.
Who people have tried to kill them.
Yeah.
One member in particular, which Congressman Loudermilk will be on with us soon, He had someone trying to take his life twice in 3 months.
Yep.
And then someone hit their car, flipped their car down the highway. That was, at least as far as I know, was accidental. But I mean, there's like 4 different horrible events in 5 or 6 months that they had.
He had someone shoot at them.
Yep.
In their car.
And then the baseball shooting, someone shot it in.
Then they
for
had the
8
train
minutes.
accident.
Yep.
With the members. I mean,
so, I mean, you think of the stress, not just on him, but also on his wife.
yeah.
You know, and the weight that Desiree carries as the wife of a member of Congress. And so, you know, we need to be known as encouragers. I keep going back to, and this morning my heart just kept going back to the book of Daniel, where Daniel, you know, what is Daniel known as? Who is he? Who is Daniel? Now, the prophet. He is not someone who runs around in a bombastic way, you know, beating people over the head, which obviously he didn't have a Bible at that point, but beating people over the head with a Bible and you know, telling them how just, Daniel he speaks the truth. He's kind, but God uses him over and over and over because of who he is. He lives out his faith openly, but not quietly.
Oh, no.
But not in an unkind fashion.
Right.
I mean, he even steps into the lion's den willingly. And God works all that out. So we need to be Daniels, modern day Daniels. And I believe that is one of the most beautiful examples of how Christians should interact in government, in the world that we live in. And granted, we have way more access to our government officials today in our current environment of American society than Daniel had. I mean, you know, we actually get to help vote in and vote out people we don't want or do want. So what an opportunity we have, and to where we can have many Daniels be involved. And so we do encourage you. I think it's so true. Call your member of Congress, call your senator, let them know you're praying for them today. And over the next, every week, you should do it every week.
Yeah. Well, the next question that we need to answer is, who do we think the next speaker will be? And you mentioned his name earlier, and I'm just going to read what just came through. It's literally breaking news as we're live right now. I mean, we're not live, but
yeah.
This is at, 11:30 on October the 4th in the morning. You mentioned Jim Jordan, and it says that he entered the race for House Speaker. And I'm going to read his quote. And he said, and this is Jim Jordan speaking. He said, "I've had a lot of people reach out to us asking me to do it because I think we can. We'll see if that happens, but I think I can." And Thomas Massey supports him. His quote says, "My first choice, if he will run, is Jim Jordan." And then also Matt Gaetz supports him and says, "My mentor, Jim Jordan, would be great." So, I mean, I think now that he has entered the race officially, it's a good option. And then there's a few that think that, that they don't know if he would have the votes to get it. That was Jake Sherman said, like every other candidate, big hurdles for Jordan to get to 218, but Scalise seems to have a bold name challenger. So there's our two who I think are very highly in the running, is Steve Scalise and now Jim Jordan.
Well, and interestingly enough, back in January, people had actually, we had all the 15 votes for the Speaker of the House, which was fascinating. It's like that kind of stuff.
It was a whirlwind.
It was, but it's always so fascinating to me because it's American history. We get to watch it. Back, I think 237 years ago, there weren't cameras. All those things.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is...
Everybody's held accountable now.
But they're verbal accounts.
Well, in some ways.
Right. But I mean, everything that happened, it's written or verbal accounts of what happened in those chambers.
But didn't back in January, they threw out Jim Jordan's name and he refused,
that's
right?
That's the point I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that it is so amazing we get to watch this. And January was so interesting because the American people saw for the first time in a long time, members of Congress were kind of just stuffed into the House chamber for hours and hours and hours and hours and days. And they actually had to kind of get along with each other and get to know each other. And I thought that was so neat because so often we never see that. So for about 5 or 6 days, Americans got to watch C-SPAN 24 hours a day and see members from both sides of the aisle walking over and getting to know each other.
That was that famous clip of AOC and
Yes.
Matt Gaetz exchanging, a laugh, and it's just not what you would normally see.
And another member that had actually, made some remarks about her, made a joke about her being killed or something. He went and apologized to her.
Yeah.
And so there was some really neat things.
That's not funny.
No, it's not. But it was a really neat moment. So back to your point, or what you had just brought up, Jim Jordan's name was brought up, and out of respect for McCarthy, which I thought was a great
It's an honorable move.
Yeah, on his part. He said, no, I'm supporting. And it was really, I think, Jim Jordan that probably saved the day in that moment because, the whole Gaetz situation, I think Jim Jordan stepping out because Gaetz was the one that put Jim Jordan's name forward back then. And it was very interesting to see all of that. So now, who knows? I like Jim Jordan. We have a funny story about Jim Jordan, too. I am going to tell it. I got to tell it. It's one of my favorites. So my dad loves, and most conservative, folks, they love Jim Jordan. And he's a super guy.
But to your dad, Jim Jordan is like his guy.
Yeah, he's his hero.
Yeah, he loves Jim Jordan.
My mom doesn't really care about any of it.
No.
But they were in D.C. This was during Trump's presidency. It was probably towards the end, I think it was, of Trump's presidency.
Yeah, it was 2019, and we were coming into 2020, not knowing that there was going to be a pandemic, but we were coming into that. We had an outreach.
And we were eating at the Trump Hotel.
And we had a meeting scheduled
that afternoon
with Jim Jordan.
We met him in the hall, and it was.
There's actually a picture of it on Facebook. If you go look at Hope to the Hill, you'll see a picture of that I took of everybody praying.
Looking at, we handed him, I think, The Chosen, and we were talking to him in the hall. So, my mom, you and my mom were the only ladies on that outreach, if I remember correctly.
And Linda
was there, obviously, yes. And so we're at dinner that night, and. Remember the whole place was crawling with Secret Service. We were like, what in the world's going on? I think you had asked, or maybe Jonathan, our friend at the time that worked at the White House, knew already that Trump
was... So you got to preface it, though. Remember, we had this meeting with Jim Jordan. Yeah. Now, your dad was there.
So happy.
He's so happy and so excited. He had introduced your mom to Jim Jordan. And it was a quick exchange. It wasn't anything that we spent a lengthy amount of time with him because, as always... Members of Congress are so busy. They have to go vote. They have meetings. They're a part of all these different organizations and things that they have to get to. And so it was a very fast-paced meeting. But he took the time to pray with us. He was very, very kind. And later that night, we had scheduled a dinner at what was then called the Trump Hotel. And there's a restaurant in there called BLT Prime. That was our favorite restaurant, which if you've never been to, it's not called BLT Prime anymore. It's just called Prime. But if you've never been there, you need to go when you come to DC. It's the best steak you'll ever have in your life. And they have this bread called popover bread.
Yes.
That I just wait to eat. I mean, you could eat popover bread and leave. It's so good. Like it's a full meal. They have the best mashed potatoes, macaroni and cheese. And then they did this candy line bacon where they torched it. Remember all that?
Oh, my goodness.
I don't think they do that anymore. They serve the bacon, but they don't do the candy line bacon where they torch it. It was just this whole thing. It was this experience when you went to eat. It was an experience. And we loved it. And anytime we had, guests in town, we would take them to BLT Prime at the Trump Hotel. Okay, that being said, we get to the Trump Hotel, eating at BLT Prime. It was in the lobby of the hotel, and it overlooked the entire front lobby of what used to be the old post office in DC. So when I say the lobby, it's a massive lobby. It's not like your normal hotel lobby. It's huge, beautiful. And you can see all the floors of the rooms.
By the way, coming behind by the office.
Yeah, welcome to Carrollton. But you could see all the rooms. When you walk into that lobby, like all the floors are open, and It goes all the way to like the 14th floor. It's huge and beautiful and majestic. And a huge American flag hung over the middle of that lobby. It was just amazing. And so we were eating at BLT Prime. We were eating with a friend of ours named Jonathan Williams, who at that time was the photographer for then Vice President Mike Pence. And I would always ask Jonathan, so what's on the schedule today? Where are they going to be? And he would always say, well, I can't really tell you everything, but, I know that somebody's going to be making a stop here maybe tonight. And so your mom and I started noticing that there were some men dressed in suits with earpieces on.
Yeah.
And that became interesting to me because I went on a mission because I knew that had to be Secret Service.
Right.
And that meant one of two things. It could be the vice president or it could be the president that time, which was Donald Trump.
Yep.
And so we went into the lobby. We walked down the stairs. We could still see you guys up there on the balcony eating. And your dad was making fun of us because he was like, you're not going to find out any information. They're not going to tell you guys. And you're going to waste your time. Your steak's going to get here. It's going to get cold. And I mean, he was just, letting us have it just as a joke. We walked down there and I went down to the Secret Service and I said, hey, is the president coming here tonight? I mean, this is his hotel. And I knew that he came there a lot to eat. It was like where he went once a week at least, if not more.
Yeah. And
they were like, ma'am, we can't tell you if the president is going to show up here or not. That's just, we can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, like, is he though? And we can't tell you. And so I just thought, okay, I'm going to try this from a different way. So I went back and I told your mom, we were determined that we had figured out that he was coming and we were going to stand in that lobby and be the first ones there because we knew anytime he came into a room, it was going to get crowded. We were going to get pushed away. And so we were like, no, we're going to stand our ground. Your dad's up there on the balcony. He's making fun of us. He doesn't think it's going to happen. He's saying we're wasting our time. Our steak's going to get cold. Meanwhile, Jonathan's eating his steak. And so I went back to the Secret Service.
He worked for the vice president.
That's what I said.
He said, I see the president all the time, so I'm not going to waste this good steak.
Yeah. So I go back to the Secret Service guy, and this is like my third time talking to him. And I said, okay, let me ask you in a different way. And he's laughing at me at this point.
Yeah.
And I said, if you were me, would you want to be down here in the lobby, or would you go all the way back upstairs and eat your steak? If you were wanting to see somebody that might be of some importance later on. And he sat there and he just giggled at me and he finally goes, I think I'd stay in the lobby. And I went, that's all I needed to know. So I ran back to your mom and I was like, he's coming. I know he's coming. And so in a few moments later, I see your dad start walking down the stairs and he's like, what are y'all doing? And I said, I have confirmation that President Trump's about to walk through this building. And so I tell him and he's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, but you're not allowed to stand here because you didn't believe from the beginning. And so anyways, he and a few others came down there. You came down there and they all get their cameras ready.
I can honestly say I never came down there.
Did you never come?
No,
I couldn't remember if you did or not.
I ate my steak.
Okay. So your dad came down. A few of the people that were on the outreach came down with us. And they, then Secret Service started wanding us. And that's when we knew he was really about to walk through the building. But then Jim Jordan happens to walk by, who was having dinner with President Trump that night. He walks by and we're like, oh, well, we know him. We just saw him today. So your dad walks up to Jim Jordan and goes, Congressman Jordan, hi, Dave Kistler. And he looks past your dad and points at your mom and goes, Betsy, right? I mean, you want to talk about hopes and dreams crushed.
Oh.
And it was just so funny because your mom, who could really care less about being known or she went, oh, yeah.
So funny enough,
I have it on video.
So funny enough, I was talking to my mom this morning on the way over here, and she said, I like Jim Jordan. He's my choice because he remembered my name.
And he did. He really did remember her name.
That's still our favorite story.
It's still my favorite story. So then, obviously, President Trump walks through, and we're standing there at the front of the line. And Mom and I, we had really worked for the spot that we had gotten.
Patiently waited.
We paved the way. Nobody would have known unless we had gone up there and started, telling people.
True.
We should have never told them. Looking back, I regret it. But all of a sudden, your dad became a schoolgirl. He was jumping in front of us, putting his phone out there, trying to get a picture.
Yeah, his friend Gary, Pastor Dole, he went, Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, we love you, Mr. President.
Yeah, it was just it was an experience.
I could hear that part from the balcony.
Oh, you couldn't miss it.
Steak.
They shouted it from the rafters down there.
It was a great night. That was a lot of fun. But we have given my dad a hard time ever since then for that. Every time Jim Jordan's name comes up, we always go, Betsy, right? Yep, that's exactly right.
It's one of our favorite stories. But
So,
it was a night that we will never forget.
Yes.
And I know your mom will never forget. Your dad may want to forget.
Exactly. Well, we say all that to get to the point of that those are the options, I think, most likely that will be at least the top two options at this point. And there's going to be other names, I think, that'll be floated around over the next
And they both
day
respect each other.
Yeah. And, I love Steve Scalise. When the baseball shooting happened, that was one of those moments where it kind of shot our ministry into the stratosphere with a lot of members because
no pun intended.
Sorry.
Good night.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. My apologies. Sorry. I can't. That's not funny.
That's the worst word you could have used right there.
Launched us into the stratosphere. Okay,
it's better.
I think I can't ever say it normally again, but launched our ministry into the stratosphere with a lot of members because we were there praying with staff and other members over that day and the days following. And I think about 6 or 7 months later, when Steve came back, it was his first day back, and actually he had to leave again to go have more surgeries. But he made this appearance on the floor with I think he was in a wheelchair, if I remember correctly. But he called the office, and we went in, and he wanted us to anoint him with oil and to pray for healing over his body. And I have what we thought was a picture. I have a 2-second video clip from that when we were with him that day. And just a very, very sweet guy, and very, very grateful for him. And so what a beautiful, beautiful thing we've been able to do. So if it is Steve Scalise or Jim Jordan, God's going to work it all out either way, and He's going to give everything that we need in this whole ordeal. And whatever He does is going to be better than what we could have imagined.
Absolutely.
So we're excited about the future. Remember today, call your member of Congress, call your senators, and encourage them. Let them know you're praying for them. If you haven't followed the podcast, you can go do that on any of the podcast forums that you're listening on. Give us a follow. You can leave a comment, review, whatever. Share it with your friends. HopeToTheHill.com if you want to learn more.
Yep.
Also, PassagesDC.com. We have a trip in January. Some other exciting stuff coming up next year that we will share with you soon.
And as always, subscribe to the podcast on whatever listening platform that you use. I
literally just said that.
Yeah, but did you say Amazon or Apple Music
but that's true. Apple Podcasts.
Spotify.
Yep, Apple Podcasts. They have their own thing now. It's not on Apple Music now. It's crazy. But please let us know. Share this with your friends. We appreciate it. We have had such a great response over the past month and a half. We're averaging between 8,000 and 9,000 plays across all of those a week.
Praise the Lord for that.
Which is so cool.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for listening and sharing this, and we can't wait to.
We're just glad to know we're not boring.
That is true. That is true. But we can't wait to hear more from you, the listeners, and we're very grateful for you. So have a great day.
Thank you guys for listening, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks. Bye.